we're going to hand it over to you now.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ellen. Thanks for setting up the audio visual and my ability to call in remotely, because I've had 3 meetings in rapid succession and not enough time to get wherever each one of them was. So first, I apologize to everybody that I couldn't be there in person. A second thing is to thank you all. First, for the work that you do. It's really important work. Thank you for being on this committee, because it certainly helps us, understand, in many ways where our leverage is best placed in terms of helping, the community that we serve. And of course, community is at the center of Community Hospital. And so, we're really delighted, that you take the time to do this for us, and are very appreciative of all the work you do, not only for this committee, but in the many organizations that you are serving. So I'm here today to tell you about, future plans for the Marlborough campus, as it goes forward. As you know, Marlborough is a completely owned entity of the UMass Memorial Health System. That system started back in 1997 with the combination of UMass Memorial Medical Center, which we call the University Campus now, and Memorial Hospitals, which was, I believe, the largest private not-for-profit hospital in Worcester. Those two joined together, and subsequently we've added, a number of entities, one of which was Memorial Hospital very early on in the process. Memorial Hospital is a hospital that's 130, years old. Started actually by, a woman, which was really unusual, in those days, and had, a successful start, then a little bit of slowdown, then came back into being, and has lasted, ever since, up until this, present day. What we're hoping to do, what is planned, is ensure the survival of the inpatient campus, in the Marlborough region for, many decades to come. As you know, Marlborough is a small hospital. It's one of the smallest hospitals, in Massachusetts. And most small hospitals, the size of Marlborough, are either specialty hospitals, rural hospitals, critical access hospitals, because of their location, island hospitals like Martha's Vineyard, etc. So planning for the future is particularly important when we're dealing with a campus and a hospital the size of Marlborough. UMass's mission, next slide please, Ellen. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there you go. A lot of this is in this presentation, which I'm sure we can make, available to you. But Marlborough's, UMass's mission is to provide best-in-class compassionate care to the communities we serve. That mission follows through to every one of our hospitals, including, the medical center, but certainly all of our community hospitals as well. At this particular point, what UMass Health is planning to do, and by the way, everything I say needs to be prefaced with regulatory approval, right? I'm sure that everybody, in the room understands regulatory approval in Massachusetts. It is not, it is not a process, that's a wink and a promise. It is a very detailed promise. It is a very detailed process. It involves a number of, agencies, determinations of need, etc. And so all of what we tell you today is all pending regulatory approval. What we hope, is that this integration with the medical center of the Marlborough Hospital, which will become then a campus of the medical center, will help to modernize our facilities, provide, for the future in terms of the high quality care that we want to deliver locally, and ultimately lead to better patient health outcomes. We think it will improve, the experience of care that we deliver, your access to tertiary care, We think that it will improve caregiver satisfaction, which is absolutely critical, to patient satisfaction. Happy caregivers provide good patient care. And, our caregiver staff, which is we call anybody who, is employed and works, at Marlborough Hospital, they're part of a team that supports everything we do and enables us to deliver patient-centered, patient-focused, and family-focused care. We also believe that what we are planning to do will significantly contribute to the economic development of Marlborough as a community. I think Marlborough is an exciting city to be in. It has a lot of growth potential, and I think that it's in the throes of this growth. And so I think this also makes good sense for the system to be investing in this particular area. Next slide, please. So the first piece of this of this plan is the merger of Marlborough with the medical center. I think, as I've told you, Marlborough is a small hospital. I think in the future, you are not going to see hospitals this size in Massachusetts or anywhere for that matter. It's just not a sustainable model unless you fall into a category, like I've said previously, a critical access hospital, such that you are so far away from other hospitals, they even need a small hospital in that particular area, or you deliver some sort of specialty care that doesn't require a huge, hospital, for example, mass, eye and ear. Or you're in a special situation where you're a specialty care kind of hospital, like a cancer hospital, needed in a particular place where you don't need, large volumes. You could be a rural hospital, and there's a whole batch of different categories, but acute general hospitals, as Marlborough is, that are this size, are difficult to maintain. And there's a number of reasons for that have to do with the quality and, the number of the medical staff, as well as your ability to attract caregivers and maintain caregivers and maintain operations. So as we're planning this through, this corporate merger of the medical center, and Marlborough, which puts Marlborough as a campus, seems to be the best way to navigate the future. It's very early in the process as I look to the future of Marlborough Hospital, and I'm happy to say that thus far Marlborough has actually weathered, the storms that many other hospitals in the state, and many of them you may be aware of, have succumbed to. Because even despite our small size, being part of a larger system, has certainly enabled us to continue, with our mission relatively unscathed. But I will tell you now, as we speak, we are starting to see, some of the effects, of what I was talking about in terms of the difficulties happen even at Marlborough. We don't have complete coverage, of all of our service lines, 24/7, 365. That's just started in the past few years. Becoming part of the medical center will shore that up, grow those services, perhaps, and it's expected we will add more services. And we will continue to do this in a setting where the physical plant that we maintain, will also have access to cutting technologies, as well as the medical specialists and tertiary services, which will be made, I think, increasingly available through this merger. I mean, we are part of a system. And the medical center, is very crowded most of the time. And even as part of the system, we still have to wait in line to get patients over there. I think that actually would not be the case when in fact we're actually a campus of them. All of the patients here would be patients of the medical center. Whereas now, even though they're patients of the UMass system, they're not patients of the medical system. So, that will certainly shore up our ability to do that. It'll bring other innovative programs. The medical center now has probably a daily census of between 15 and 20 patients that are part of what's called hospital at home. So patients, come to the emergency room or they're in the hospital, and the physicians that are taking care of them make a decision that this patient could probably be taken care of at home, given the amount of services that hospital at home can deliver to them. It's an enormously successful program in terms of two things. First of all, patients love it. And when you think about it, patients of all stripes, they actually prefer to be at home. I know that, for those of us who are in hospital work, we scratch our heads and say, why would somebody prefer to be at home? But actually, most people prefer to be at home. Just remember, they're surrounded by their loved ones. The food they eat is the food that they usually eat. They don't have to, ring a bell and wait for somebody to come and help them to the bathroom, et cetera, et cetera. So when that's able to, hospital at home has provided a good way to keep people at home who can do that, and at the same time free up those very needed beds for other patients. Medical center has this in play, but it's very hospital license based. And so once Marlborough, assuming all the regulatory approvals, et cetera, happen, once they're apart, we can actually continue that, that focus, and perhaps add another 5 patients to that census, that would be in the hospital at Marlborough can now be taking care of their home in this community, which I think is very important and have been very successful. Next slide, please. Part of the effort to do this includes the development of the Cancer Center, which is already owned and operated by the medical center, though on the Marlborough campus. Okay, we would like to improve that Cancer Center with the addition of a technology which has been available for a number of years, probably about a decade, but which is now woefully inadequate in terms of the amount of services that are needed throughout New England. But now we only have one site where that can be done at. So presently, all proton therapy is delivered at MGH in Boston. They have 3 proton therapy units, which are now aging. They're at the point where in the life cycle of this kind of equipment, they need to be refurbished, re-enhanced, or improved. And Mass General is in the process of doing that. But to do that, they have to take them out of service. And it's not just they get out of service for a week. It's like they get out of service for a year before they can be put back into service. That provides opportunities, and UMass would like to be in, the service line of having proton therapy. Next slide on this, please. So proton therapy, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, it's a form of radiation, but it's precisely targeted. It reduces the damage of surrounding tissues because it's so precisely targeted, and the amount of radiation is so much smaller. There are fewer side effects, and the surrounding tissue does not, suffer the consequences of being irradiated, or irradiated to an extent, that would do that. So it's very effective at treating children. And so that's one of the reasons you see these units in Boston, because of course there's Children's Hospital there. And you want, these units, or those units to be, close to that population. However, access to these units is becoming challenging because as the treatment becomes, more and more commonplace, and there's more benefits, determined, it grows the patient population that would benefit from proton therapy. And so I'm sure that we'll be seeing more proton therapy delivered in the future. There's also exciting things about about this kind of therapy for the future. Things known as like fast treatments, which are a kind of treatment which you can actually get, the vast majority of the radiation that you need in just a few sittings, as opposed to which I'm sure if you know people who've had radiation therapy, very often it's, 35 treatments, or more, over a number of weeks, 7, 8 weeks, et cetera. That can be compressed, and anybody who's gone through that kind of treatment understands how, how physically taxing it is to go someplace every day, for what amounts to a few minutes worth of therapy. I'm sure that we'll even see proton therapy have more usefulness as we talk about it in the future. So this step would actually put Marlborough and our community on the map in terms of being a world-class center for cancer care. Next slide.
Sorry, Charlie.
That's all right. Take your time. I'm almost through with the presentation, so it'll give us a lot of time for questions. So of course, you know, what's happening right now is that we are in the process of expanding our emergency department by 10 additional beds to alleviate overcrowding, reduce the wait times, improve the patient experience. And the one thing we know is that patients who are waiting in the emergency room as boarders to get up to their room, you know, those patients, you know, even though we believe we give out high care to our boarders, you know, high quality care, and I think we do, but, you know, the studies are quite clear that, you know, the quicker you can get up to your room, you know, and the quicker you can get the regular care that we deliver, the better off you'll be. So having a well-staffed emergency room and access to beds that are upstairs and to specialty care, et cetera, you know, is really important for the future and for patients choosing, you know, Marlborough Hospital Go. And if in fact the plans that the city has to invite, you know, a number, you know, of technologies, et cetera, into Marlborough, you know, I can't, you know, help but believe that those industries want easy access, you know, for their employees, et cetera, you know, who need an emergency room to come in, get cared for, get treated, and hopefully returned, you know, to their other environments, or if needed, get the care that they need, whether, you know, at our campus or at any of the campuses within the medical center. In addition to that ED, which is a $36 million project, which has already been approved and has actually started in the planning phase, we'll be adding a multidisciplinary clinic. That's our term for a clinic, you know, that really is around providing specialty care or chronic disease management care from specialists, you know, who are usually coming from the medical group, mostly people like diabetologists, rheumatologists, certain kinds of dermatology care, et cetera, you know, where it's chronic care involving, you know, high delivery of care and high management in terms of the number of people that touch the patient, in terms of, you know, a lot of these kinds of services are not just driven by physicians. You know, there's also a team of specialists, particularly when you're talking about diabetes or rheumatology, et cetera. So that clinic is also, you know, part of the plan for the development. You know, I think we'll see these things probably within 2 years, start to finish, and seeing their first patients. Some of them might take, a multidisciplinary clinic might take a little bit longer, although I'm pretty hopeful that 2 years is enough, because some of these areas you have to do recruitment efforts around bringing those specialists in. But once you have, you know, it's like that old movie, I forget the name of it, you know, if you build it, they will come, you know, I think it was Field of Dreams, it just came to me. So, you know, I think we can see that. And again, part of this is that right now, Marlborough Hospital only has one CT scanner. Now, I remember that, you know, I'm old enough to remember when one CT scanner, you know, was more than enough. But in fact, you know, most people come to the ED, or not most, but a significant number of patients come to the ED, get a CAT scan for their issues, et cetera. So if the ED is using the CAT scan that the rest of the hospital uses, everybody has to wait. And more CAT scans are integral, you know, to doing things that involve procedures on patients, you know, what we call interventional radiology. You know, there's a lot of things we used to treat with surgery that we treat with radiology now. You know, but we put in wires, you know, we biopsy organs, we put in catheters, et cetera, all through CAT scans, which involve people, which don't involve people now having to go to the ORs that they used to have to go to. So that's also part of the plan, and that's a $4 million expense. Again, because this computer, this CT scan will have the ability to do cardiac CT scanning, which can very often save somebody from having to undergo a cardiac cath, or help us realize that somebody needs it more quickly. And will also involve the ability to do interventional procedures. And so we'll have 2 CAT scanners, so that doing a procedure which might take a CAT scan out of commission, or that, you know, take it away from other patients using it for a half hour or more, will now have the ability to have 2 of them going at a time. And in the more distant future, and when we say distant, we're not talking about, a decade. We're talking about, 4, 5, 6 years. We'll be able to refurbish and modernize our patients, our hospitals' inpatient rooms. That kind of a project nowadays is not cheap. That's $100 million project to do. Adding or improving hospital beds probably are somewhere between $1 and $2 million per hospital bed. It's become a pretty expensive thing. And for those of you who have seen or heard about the new addition in the North Pavilion at the Medical Center, it is a technological wonder particularly for a doc my age to go and see the things that, they can do in a patient's room now. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, for listening, but I'm sure that some of you may have questions. I'm here to answer whatever I can. So if you have them, I see the clock is ringing. Great. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to answer, and I will do the best I can to answer. And if I can't, Ellen will keep track of what I can answer, and we'll try and get you answers. No questions. I've been very thorough. Oh, I believe Stacy has a question.
Hi, yes, thanks. That was really interesting. Thank you so much. Really thoughtful. I'm just curious, do you expect to have to discontinue or decrease any services as part of this process?
No, that's an easy question. No, if anything, we'll be able to actually, do a better job and increase services, as time goes on. Now, once you're a campus of an operation, so our whole world becomes this one hospital. In other words, we're all part of the medical center. So anytime you do that, we may decide that there are certain things that are better done at the medical center, and the medical center may decide that there are better things. When I say the medical center, it's going to be really hard and confusing when we talk about this, right? Because we're so used to talking about Marlborough Hospital. So let's talk about Marlborough campus, University campus, Memorial campus. Let's do it that way, right? The other campuses of the medical center are all outpatient campuses, but those would be the 3 inpatient campuses. I think maybe I may be wrong. There may be a psych campus called PTRC, but it's still, a Worcester-based campus. So my point is, we may say that, well, certain things are better for anybody to be done at this particular place and others at our particular place. It is important, as we discussed, this merger and the plans for this merger, that we want to make sure that we keep the community hospital feel of the campus as a resource to the community, et cetera. So I don't see any of the things that we do on our site, as needing, to go to the medical center that don't need to go to the medical center now. In fact, I do see things that are done at the medical center that may be able to be done here, because when you look at the acuity, the medical center, needs to focus more on high acuity, because they are the academic medical center for tertiary care for all of our community hospitals. And the truth is, at this point, they have a hard time meeting that demand because they're so overburdened. Now, opening 72 beds this week, will help that tremendously, because, they won't have these boarders that are sitting in their emergency room waiting for beds that are there. So the quick answer is no.
Thank you.
Other questions? So you may have questions that either you don't want to ask right now, or you may want to go back to your organizations and see if they have questions. We're happy to answer those questions. You can submit them.
Charlie, can you hear me? Charlie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Is there a question? All right, that was you, Ellen, right? If you're talking, I can't hear you now.
It should be green. Okay, it's green now. Can you hear me, Charlie?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, great. Just curious, speaking of beds, will the multidisciplinary clinic be just a day treatment option? And if not, have we considered what the bed impact would be?
Okay, the multidisciplinary clinic is all ambulatory. It's not an inpatient unit.
Okay.
In terms of what the impact will be, actually the whole point of multidisciplinary clinics is to actually provide better chronic care for patients, with these chronic diseases like diabetes. If you look at the impact of diabetes, on our population, it's incredible. It's dramatic. And if you look at the improvement, in diabetics' lives by things like the development of the GLP-1 drugs, and everybody knows about GLP-1 drugs more because of their weight loss effect, but they are really life-saving drugs for diabetics, which improve almost every aspect of diabetes in terms of people's renal function, their cardiac complications, etc. And these are clinics that are really designed, to help people get the medical care they need to actually improve, improve their life, improve the downstream effects of their disease on other organs, and they've been tremendously successful. So I don't think that they will add to the inpatient, burden, but I will say that one of the things that this provides for is the development of new inpatient beds and new inpatient and revised inpatient beds over time. That was that last bullet, that $100 million investment, in the actual physical plant and the beds for Marlborough. And as you know, this has been in the planning for quite some time in terms of improving the beds. It just makes more sense to do it now under the medical center's license, with their ability then to send patients here who, need an inpatient stay, but they don't need a tertiary care.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room have any questions, comments, thoughts on what this means? Anyone who is in virtually, any other comments, questions, thoughts? As Charlie mentioned, there is a regulatory approval process. We will be filing what's called a determination of need that we have to file with the Department of Public Health as to why this corporate merger makes sense for us to be under the medical center's license. That's one determination of need. The second determination of need is for us to offer proton beam therapy on our campus, which would include a build-out in the back of the hospital where the cancer center is. The ED, we will expand the current footprint and we'll expand it out to the parking lot. That will not require regulatory approval. So as part of the process that we have to file in our application is that we are discussing these projects, these initiatives, these services with a variety of stakeholders, of which the Community Benefits Advisory Council are stakeholders, because you are all charged with helping improve the health and well-being of the communities that we mutually serve. We will also, later today, we'll be holding a similar presentation for business leaders in the community so that they're aware of what we're doing. Next week, we're offering 2 sessions similar to this to the residents of the communities that we serve. So you may have seen an ad in the Community Advocate. You may have received an email from us inviting the community. We actually did a mailing to our abutters of the hospital, so that we really want to get your feedback and your input as to why it is great to make these investments in our region. And as Charlie mentioned also, healthcare in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has had challenges. The Stewart situation last year caused 2 community hospitals to close, and the fact that UMass Memorial Health feels that investing in our region makes sense. So if you add it up, it's $36 million for the ED, $6 million for the multi-D, and $4 million for the CAT scan. That's $46 million. On top of it, the pro-beam will be about a $50 to $55 million investment. And then down the line, $100 million to renovate and improve our patient rooms. So if you add that up, UMass Memorial Health is potentially committing, and I say potentially because, again, it's based upon regulatory approval, almost $200 million in this facility, which you're sitting in an area where those are the original 1913 doors when the hospital was built. So it is a huge benefit to our region, and the 495 corridor coming in from 290, and to be able to offer these and improve the services so that people have better access, don't have to drive as far, and have access to really specialty care is something that is harder and harder to come by. So we will be asking you for some feedback, and you don't have to do it now because we will need to share what do people in the community think about this. And hopefully you think it's a good idea to be providing these types of services to the community. And based upon what I just said, does that raise any other questions to the group, from the group? No? Oh, wait, Lynn? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've talked through the years, Ellen, you and I have talked through the years about nutrition and preventive care so that people don't become ill. And I've noticed in Massachusetts there's not a lot of wellness programs to help people from becoming metabolically ill or prevent diabetes and whatever. Is there any plan in the UMass system to do that sort of preventive medicine as opposed to just medical treatment?
Did you hear that question, Charlie?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that. Yeah, I did hear the question. I didn't know it was directed at me.
Well, it was in terms of preventive care, wellness, and
I did hear it. I did hear it. And first, let me just say, I think that, healthcare operations are certainly, they're designed and suited to actually treat patients, right? That's probably what we do best. Having said that, what you're asking is really, really important. But it's not something I think, that we're actually designed to do. And that's why we need to reach out to the community, to do this. Healthy eating, et cetera, food is medicine. Those are things that we do get involved in. It's important that we continue to be involved in those kinds of things. In other words, I think what your question is basically saying, how do we keep people from, getting diabetes? That's complicated, right? Because diabetes it's genetically predisposed, and certainly, when you talk about, secondary diabetes or type 2 and type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is, definitely, something that sort of, happens, and I don't know that there's any, way that I know of to prevent type 1. Type 2, I think, when you talk about, what you're talking about is, how do we keep people from getting obese? How do we keep people from, doing other things that not only, might bring on diabetes sooner, but, may also create a whole host of additional problems for somebody who's going to be diabetic. In other words, metabolic syndromes, that's more difficult. And certainly diet and exercise, healthy lifestyles, are very important to that process. Do we have programs, that do that? quite frankly, I'm not familiar with them, you know, at my, you know, from where I see. I'm sure there are programs. I'm sure that, you know, we do, like I say, food is medicine, et cetera. Do we need to do more? Yes. I will tell you that the burden, and when I say burden, I just mean the amount, you know, not a, this is burdensome kind of thing, but the burden of the number of diabetics, you know, on our healthcare system, who are now at levels where, you know, they're requiring more and more hospital-based care. Or when you even go to it, you know, when we look at what's the number one reason people wind up on dialysis, what's the number one reason people, you know, wind up, you know, with, you know, bypass surgeries or, you know, cardiac catheterizations and, you know, interventions. You know, we see diabetes, you know, certainly lurking in the background. So I don't think I've answered your question directly, except to put an exclamation point by it and say the need, you know, for healthier lifestyles becomes more and more important. And, you know, I will also say, I think that we still remain, you know, as a society, more tone deaf than we should be, you know, to that thing that you're asking us to pay attention to.
Yeah. I have a follow-up to that. And I'm thinking of some of the challenges that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has put out and some of the activities that this board has done over the last 15 years that I know of, including the walking school bus and other lifestyle changes. It seems to me that it would be a good use of community benefit activities to do the education and the lifestyle stuff. And it's cheap. Education is somewhat cheap, right? Seminars, whatever, to help make this a healthier community. And that's really why I'm on this board, to make the community healthier. And I just think it would be a great investment for UMass.
I certainly agree.
Thank you. Well, Charlie, thank you for your time. And if any other folks have questions as a follow-up, we will make sure we share them with you as to, you know, what this means for the community. So thanks again. And now we'll just get into, with our remaining time, we will get into our standing meeting. So thank you, Charlie.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you, committee members, for having me here and listening to what I have to say. Thank you.
Ellen, I'm not sure if you're talking, but we can't hear you on our end.
Brian, I apologize because I'm not touching anything on our microphones, and we keep on losing it. So I apologize.
No problem.
So it doesn't make sense to me. And now, so let me just pull up the other slide. I can get Sarah here to help me figure out how to do this. Give me 1 second, I apologize. Now I can't figure out how to pull up the other. So I stopped sharing that one. And so how do I get back so I can pull up share? Right, but I can't get to the screen. I can't get to my desktop. Oh, okay. Hang on. Okay. So. Okay, so can everyone see the Community Benefits Advisory Council screen? We can see it in the room. Can you folks see it? You know, yeah, and Claire said that they would do the survey for us. Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. God, that's Tracy. She's clearly very committed and passionate. She is. I mean, it benefits them, obviously, to help with the process and hopefully get more money. I haven't heard of it. Can you folks see the screen? Do you see the presentation? Okay, Brian said thumbs up, and you can hear it. Right? Okay, so quickly, Charlie did take some time in terms of the presentation. What the next thing we
You lost your audio again, Ellen, sorry.
stopping. Can you hear me now, Brian? It is like literally no one is touching it, and all of a sudden the mute comes on.
Do you want to try one of these other ones?
No, well,
Maybe one of
it's the red light because Ellen had it. Well, let's see how we go. We'll just keep our eyes on it to make sure. So what we need to do is to vote to accept the charter. It was in the meeting minutes. It's here. This is the final. So I ask motion to accept the charter for the Community Benefits Council. So moved. Second? Second. Okay, so all in favor? Aye. Okay, so this is our charter that we've all agreed to as to what our mission is, who consists of the membership, and what our commitment is, and what our purpose is. So now that is officially what we're doing. Our last meeting, we had some questions that we asked of folks in terms of and we wanted to share the feedback that we received based upon, if you remember, we had a question and you put stickies all around the room. And so the question was, do you live, work, or both in our community? And we had 0 who said they live in the community, which I guess maybe people thought the city of Marlborough, or they said they work in the community. 6 people said they work in the community, or both. There were 8 who said both. I myself said both. I live in Northborough, and I work in our community. So there were 8 who said that they wear both hats. We will share this information with you also. The next question was, what is your role in our community? And this is what the breakdown was of the people who were present at our meeting. That 7 said they were social service employees, 7 said they were residents, because you could do more than one role. We had 6 who were municipal employees. That could be the teachers or other folks who represent. It could be Trish Pope, who is the executive director of the Council on Aging and the Senior Center. We had 5 who were healthcare employees, 3 who said they were school employees, 2 who identified themselves also as community leaders, business employees, volunteers, and we had 1 who identified as a parent. This is important, too, for us to know what is the makeup of our Community Benefit Advisory Council. I have to package this information also for when I file our Attorney General's report and our IRS as to who do we have as part of our Community Benefits Advisory Council. We asked the group, what are your top health priorities? And this is what came up, and you can see mental health was what many people identified as a top priority in our community, followed by substance use, access to health care, homelessness, aging problems, food insecurity, preventive care, transportation, financial security, and nutrition. And again, people could identify more than one priority, but when we look at our group as a whole, it appears that mental health and substance use disorder are top priorities. So when we're looking at programming and we're looking at initiatives, maybe this is where we need to focus a little bit more. Our next question was, what is the overall health of our community? Only one said very good. 7 said good. 1 said good to fair, and 5 said fair. So our group, the perception is we're not that healthy of a region or of a community. And so what are the things, again, that we could do to help improve the health and well-being of our community? We had a question that came up as to who is missing from the Community Benefits Advisory Council. That question was asked, and we didn't put stickies up, but there were some comments about faith-based community was missing, elected officials were missing. We have had, we do share with the mayor's office about this group, as well as the fire chief has expressed interest and actually had accepted that he was coming today. So although we have asked some of those folks due to conflicts, et cetera, we have not had the representation that we would potentially like to have. Rebecca and I will follow up more with the City of Marlborough to get potentially, I mean, we have 2 representatives from the Health Department and Board of Health from the town of Hudson. Maybe we need to reach out and get, the Marlborough Board of Health involved, but also we have to look at what about Northborough? We have a lot of people from that region, but Marlborough and Hudson tend to be our 2 largest communities, so how do we maybe get more folks? We have the Hudson Public Schools representative, we have the Marlborough Public Schools represented, which is great, but maybe we need to do a little bit more outreach. So maybe if you could email me or Rebecca with some thoughts of either individuals or what, either, as I said, individuals. If you know a name, Harry Smith from, such and such, let us know, or feel free to introduce someone to this, shoot them an email and say, hey, would you be interested in getting involved if there's someone that you know. Ellen and I met last week with someone from the Community Foundation of Metro West, who has expressed interest in getting involved in the Community Benefit Advisory Council. Was unable to make it today, but he is someone who is doing a lot of work, and he considers, Marlborough as being a region where they need to get a little bit more involved, and we're looking at some things that we could partner with that foundation. So if there's anyone else that you think would make a difference, we would like to get them involved. And our next question is, and we only have 5 minutes remaining, is the big question, the $64,000 question is, how do we prioritize the work that we're doing to make a difference within your organizations, within what the hospital has the resources to do, and that will really work on improving the health and well-being of the community. We have made a commitment on the substance use disorder of doing Narcan training, and we have done several Narcan trainings here at the hospital. We did it at the Hudson Public Library. Rebecca and I now are certified Narcan trainers, so that we'll be able to do it either here in our Leahy conference room as part of community education, or reaching out to some. We had someone from one of the churches who had expressed some interest in doing Narcan training. So in a little way, we're looking at how can we address substance use disorder, and what we've made the commitment is doing some, at least, training that could, because when we do the training program, there's a huge education component of that as to opioid use, et cetera, as well as how can you save a life. So it's not just, here's your kit and here's how to use it, how to dispense it. There's an education component involved in that.
That speaks to the preventative part.
Correct. So that is something, but again, we're looking at how can we, what are the other things that we could do that address mental health and substance use disorder. And again, how do we prioritize? Are there activities, are there programs that you currently are doing that somebody else in the room can partner with, or the hospital can partner with? So I know, like Allison, last year you had your health fair at Hudson High School, where you had a big turnout from the community and had different stations set up, or different services so that people could go, and it was great. You had interpreters there, so it really was impactful. Are there other types of those programs that we could all get involved with? And looking at sharing a calendar of events. We had talked about it is important for us to share any activities that we have. I think over there's a flyer of, we're doing, with February being Heart Month, we're doing keeping your options and your arteries open, and we have our cardiac rehab nurse who is going to be doing that. We are doing more community education here, so we will share that information with you if you think there are folks that you could be sharing it across your own network, or are there programs that you're doing that we can share? We're very active on Facebook with a lot of our programs, and so are there things that we could share? A lot of times we tag the City of Marlborough, we tag the Hudson Board of Health, we tag a lot of the different organizations, so that then you can go ahead and share. And it's not just the educational, but we do a lot of, not just the programs per se, but we do a lot of other tips of how to keep yourself healthy, and feel free that you can share those types of things. More to Lynn's point, maybe on the preventive side, the importance of getting colorectal screening or mammograms or those types of things. We try to get those tips out also about the importance of taking care of yourself. If you have similar, feel free to send it to Rebecca, and we will look at ways that we can share that information. What was that was the flyer that we said. So a lot of information today in terms of what we're looking at, and to Lynn's point of how do we get more preventive, how do we get more educational programs, and for everyone in this room who's done those types of programs, how do you get people to come and attend them? And that's where that has always been a bit of our struggle. We had offered a series, there are 3 series, on mental health, that we did one at the Marlborough Public Library, one here, and the attendance was pretty low. And why is that? Are people not interested? How do we get to folks to get them to participate in these types of programs? So get me ideas.
Have we considered more remote? I wonder with the mental health in particular, where there's still a stigma, and so the coming in person and
right,
whatever might be a little less appealing. But in a remote setting, you don't even have to have a camera on.
Right. I mean, that's a good point, and that I think that we have to look at that as options for people, and so we'll look at some of the programming that we're planning this spring, and looking at, do we do it as a Zoom, do we do it as a virtual program?
The other thing is actually having it monthly on the same day of, same evening, the third Thursday or whatever it is,
right,
so that people can put on their calendar way in advance, and making it Zoom.
Yep.
We did that with a racism group called Wrestling with Racism, little group out in Central Mass that was really quiet, and we put a program together during COVID when no one was talking to anybody or going out of it. And it's still going strong every single month. People do want to attend and have community of some sort, even if it's virtual. There's obviously benefits to people meeting together, but there are cohorts of people out there that are interested in health, and they're looking for ways to address that. That would be my suggestion. Always, 12 months a year, have the date of the month that you have a program and do it by Zoom.
And do we rotate the topic, or do you think it looking at?
I think you rotate topics. If you end up having communities that want to get more in depth in one thing, that's great.
Right.
If you might have people that really want to deal with children or mental health or whatever, if it grows organically in that way, that's great. But I can tell you, it is so cheap to run these programs. I mean, because it costs about $100 for an hour of programming on Zoom for me to hire a professional. And if you think about that 12 months a year, that is, you can do a lot of really good things for $100 a month. And if it ends up being 3 different cohorts and 3 different topics in a month, so that's $300 a month. That's still small money.
Right.
I'm a believer.
So I guess my ask of you is, who on the Community Benefits Advisory Council would be interested in speaking on a topic that, whether it's, you do a lot of financial counseling, you do the hoarding programs. Is there anyone in this group, and you don't have to say it now, you can email either me or Rebecca and say, yes, I'd be interested. We could help you put together your presentation, or, but it would be great if we had someone from the Board of Health at Hudson who could talk. And it could be a panel discussion. It could be Lynn speaking about hoarding, or someone from ClearPath, and we could have someone from our behavioral health department speak. But this is a group that, how do we leverage the skill set in this room, the knowledge in this room, that we could, I love the idea of having a calendar of these topics that we address each month on the same date, and whether it's 6 to 7 o'clock at night or 5 to 6 or whatever, and we know what the topics could potentially be: mental health, substance use, we've seen that, but who could help us in terms of speaking? Even, someone from the bank, could they speak about, again, financial wellness? Because how many people, they're not able to pay their bills, they're not able to get their medications, they're not able to pay their utilities. So are there tips that I turn to you, Ellen, and say, is there someone, and again, we can help to put together a presentation, or Chris, is there something that you see that would be great for kids? How do you get kids active? How do you get kids involved? Because we know childhood obesity is a huge thing, and why is childhood obesity a huge thing is because kids aren't as active. So that is something that, as I said, I love the concept. I think we can look at how could we do that on the technical side. It wouldn't be that difficult, because obviously we have the ability to do these types, and maybe to enhance, we're making an investment in a little bit of a better setup for our video conferencing, but what are areas that you could potentially commit to, or someone within your organization? I think that would be awesome for us to do.
We would love to do more financial wellness. We just recently did one for college students up in the Lunenburg area. Robins and bridges, we call it. Just, people are generally, need a lot of help with that. But we have a team at Main Street Bank specializing in different age group topics, whatever. We'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
We could also, as I was mentioning to Chris, we set up a audio-visual system at our training room in 4th Street. It's called an OWL. So when you're hybrid and the OWL moves to whoever is in the room.
Right.
So we could certainly offer.
You could host it.
Yeah, we could certainly offer that if that makes it a little bit easier for people to engage. So definitely big on the mental, on the financial wellness, and I love what you talk about in terms of preventative health care. And there are some people that I can speak to that would. Has anybody heard of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again? That whole concept. No, it's a big. Call it a movement, I don't know. Yeah. Right? And there's a lot of people talking about the notion of how we, stay healthy and how we've gotten so much more ill over the last few generations than we have ever been. And why? But anyway, I could reach out to some of those people and speak
That would be great.
about being a host.
I'm getting back to health. I think of when Sam Wong was in the air.
Oh, yeah. Right.
We used to do on second Saturdays. Sam Wong used to give seminars on health, emergency preparedness, how to, a number of different topics. And people would come on a Saturday morning at 10 in the morning. They would wake up and go because they wanted to hear those kind of topics. I think with the technology, with everyone having access to Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, you could start a community.
Sure.
Start having community come together a little bit and be more of a matchmaker, I guess, to build community around health issues. Again, getting back to Johnson and Johnson's, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation's goals, and we've been talking about how to make the community healthier for a long time, and that would go a long way.
So if we go back to this slide and again, we're over time, so we'll just summarize. How do we prioritize our work? I think my recommendation based upon our discussion is to put together a calendar of topics that we feel as a group, again, we know what people feel is important, and look at a virtual option for a 12-month series, and what are the topics, and who would be content experts who could speak to those topics. And we will send out, a summary of what we spoke of, but I think if as a Community Benefits Advisory Council, we said, we're going to commit to 12 virtual topics, 12 virtual seminars or educational programs, knowing that it takes time to build that. I think that would be a huge accomplishment, on top of the other things that we are also doing. Like we will be doing Safe Summer Fun Day, or Allison may or may not, and I don't know, do the Hudson Public Schools or the Town of Hudson Wellness Fair. Those things are, on top of it, but I think if we as a Community Benefits Advisory Council commit to it and identify who the experts are, I think that is how we prioritize our work. Would people agree, or are we willing to say that that would be our goal?
Great place to start. As soon as we have, I think we could probably come up with a bunch of topics, and then it'll just be a matter of the content experts, right, lining them up.
Right. And how about Brian or Trish? Your thoughts on that? Would you want to weigh in on that?
I think it sounds like a plan. I know we are committed to doing the health fair again, but I think those things we've typically been doing, we should continue to do, and then if we could layer this idea on top of it, I think it's a great plan.
Trish, any thoughts?
No, I agree with everyone. I think it's a great idea. I know that some of the topics that you touched on this morning, I will be reaching out to you because doing a Narcan training here at the senior center would be something that would be very well received. Just so you know,
Okay.
I think it's Rebecca or somebody from the hospital is doing a joint health thing. We had so many people sign up that we had to shut it down. So we're going to ask to be doing that again. So people, like much to what Lynn said, really do want to be educated.
Right. And I think healthy aging or aging was one of the priorities too that we as a group. Well, I think, as I said, we're 10 minutes over, a lot of content today, a lot to muddle over. But again, I appreciate for the folks who came in the room and the folks who signed on. I think that there's some exciting things that we as a group can work together on and accomplish. Anything else anyone would like to add?
For maybe a takeaway, just a suggestion. If we all think of a particular topic that we're passionate about, maybe even get a little granular in terms of what that speaker would cover and share it with you.
That'd be great.
And then if you have the content expert to go along with that, even better. But at least let's start there so we can take a look at what we feel might be the most relevant.
Great.
Get started on. That makes sense?
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks to the folks who are virtual, and we will be back in touch with some follow-up. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And when I